Well, hey, Lighthouse, let's continue our devotions in Daniel, and we're turning to chapter 3 of Daniel today, and we're going to see Nebuchadnezzar do something very odd. If you're just following the story, you would almost expect Nebuchadnezzar to do the exact opposite thing as he does in the story, because he has just given such strong, we would say, glory, praise to the God of Israel, to Daniel's God. You remember Daniel has interpreted Nebuchadnezzar's dream for him, and Nebuchadnezzar is thrilled that Daniel serves the God that can come through like that. And so we would maybe expect for Nebuchadnezzar to have some sort of conversion experience. But there is a terrible truth about human nature that I want us to think about as we do devotions together today. That it is possible to know that Yahweh is God. It is possible to know that Jesus is King, that Jesus is God, and still worship something else. You know, I think it's kind of common for people to hide behind that, a misconception of that people would live for everything the world has, that they would set themselves up as the king of their life, that they would worship their appetites. And yet when you say, man, have you thought about worshiping Christ and Christ alone? They would say, oh, I know all about Jesus as God. I believe that Jesus rose. I think there's a God in heaven. They might even say the words, I'm a Christian. Like that's how I identify. And yet Nebuchadnezzar reminds us that it is possible to know the truth about God and yet still in huge and profound ways not worship him, but rather worship false gods. So whether or not this story is in chronological order, I don't know, but certainly as the story reads in the book of Daniel, right after Nebuchadnezzar's proclamation, oh, Daniel, your God is the God of God and the Lord of kings and all of that, and Daniel gets a big promotion. Daniel, you're the kind of guy we want in the government. And then the very next thing we read is this: King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold. Interesting that it is of gold. Obviously, gold is precious and noble metal, all of that stuff. But also, do you remember in the dream that he had of this statue? And Daniel told him, oh, the head of that statue that's made of gold, that's you, Nebuchadnezzar. That is Babylon. You are the top of the heap, the head of the statue made out of gold. And so maybe Nebuchadnezzar takes that and says, you know, I want to make a big deal about me. I don't want to make a big deal about that rock, that uncut rock that destroys the statue, destroys all of the systems and idolatries of the world. No, rather, I want to make a big deal about me. I'm the golden head of the statue. I'm going to make a statue of gold so everybody can bow down to it. He knows that it's a losing game. He knows that Yahweh is the God of God and the Lord of kings. And yet, instead of submitting to him, he's going to build a statue made of gold. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits, big tall statue, and its breadth 6 cubits. He set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Also interesting that Daniel, as he is elevated in the last part of chapter 2, he asks a favor of Nebuchadnezzar, and his friends Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are made as statesmen over the territory of Babylon. So this is where this statue goes. So then the plan gets made. Hey, we're going to set the statue up, and when the band plays the bagpipes and the lyres and all of that, then all of the governmental officials, the satraps and the governors and all of these different government officials are going to bow down to it. It's going to be the Pledge of Allegiance, and it's not the Pledge of Allegiance to Yahweh, it's the Pledge of Allegiance to this false god. And then here's what happens in the last part of the section. In verse 7, it says, therefore, as soon as all the people heard the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the bagpipe, and every kind of music, all the peoples, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. What a tragedy that Nebuchadnezzar has come face to face with the power of God. Nebuchadnezzar knows for sure that the God of Israel is also the God of Babylon, and he refuses to acknowledge it. And he's going to come face to face with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in a minute, who are men more nobler than he is. But it's a stark warning for you and I that knowing that God is the God of gods, the King of kings, the Lord of lords, is not enough. The question is not just is Christ the King of the whole universe? The question is Christ the King of your life? So why don't we not be like Nebuchadnezzar, who had answered prayer, who was given the gift of Daniel's faith, who came face to face with the most powerful king in the universe, and instead decided to worship himself and his God. Rather, let's be the one that don't build other things in our lives, but just worship Christ. All right, be loved, Lighthouse.